It's April the 29th, 2020, and God's word today is Genesis chapter 18. The Lord appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre while he was sitting at the entrance to his tent in the heat of the day. Abraham looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. When he saw them, he hurried from the entrance to his tent to meet them and bowed low to the ground. He said, "If I found favour in your eyes, my lord, do not pass your servant by. Let a little water be brought, and then you may all wash your feet and rest under this tree. Let me get you something to eat so you can be refreshed, and then go on your way, now that you've come to your servant." "Very well," they answered, "do as you say." So Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah. "Quick," he said, "get 3 seahs of fine flour and knead it and bake some bread." Then he ran to the herd and selected a choice, tender calf and gave it to a servant who hurried to prepare it. He then brought some curds and milk and the calf that had been prepared, and he set these before them. While they ate, he stood near them under a tree. "Where is your wife Sarah?" they asked him. "There in the tent," he said. Then the Lord said, "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah your wife will have a son." Now Sarah was listening at the entrance to the tent which was behind him. Abraham and Sarah were already old and well advanced in years, and Sarah was past the age of childbearing. So Sarah laughed to herself as she thought, "After I'm worn out and my master is old, will I now have this pleasure?" Then the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Will I really have a child now that I'm old?' Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son." Sarah was afraid, so she lied and said, "I did not laugh." But he said, "Yes, you did laugh." When the men got up to leave, they looked down towards Sodom, and Abraham walked along with them to see them on their way. Then the Lord said, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do? Abraham will surely become a great and powerful nation, and all nations on earth will be blessed through him. For I've chosen him so that he will direct his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just, so that the Lord will bring about for Abraham what he has promised him." Then the Lord said, "The outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great and their sin so grievous that I will go down and see if what they have done is as bad as the outcry that has reached me. If not, I will know." The men turned away and went towards Sodom, but Abraham remained standing before the Lord. Then Abraham approached him and said, "Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? What if there are 50 righteous people in the city? Will you really sweep it away and not spare the place for the sake of the 50 righteous people in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to kill the righteous with the wicked, treating the righteous and the wicked alike. Far be it from you. Will not the judge of all the earth do right?" The Lord said, "If I find 50 righteous people in the city of Sodom, I will spare the whole place for their sake." Then Abraham spoke up again, "Now that I've been so bold as to speak to the Lord, though I'm nothing but dust and ashes, what if the number of the righteous is 5 less than 50? Will you destroy the whole city because of 5 people? If I find 45 there," he said, "I will not destroy it." Once again he spoke to him. "What if only 40 are found there?" he said. "For the sake of 40, I will not do it." Then he said, "May the Lord not be angry, but let me speak. What if only 30 can be found there?" He answered, "I will not do it if I find 30 there." Abram said, "Now that I've been so bold as to speak to the Lord, what if only 20 can be found there?" He said, "For the sake of 20, I will not destroy it." Then he said, "May the Lord not be angry, but let me speak just once more. What if only 10 can be found there?" He answered, "For the sake of 10, I will not destroy it." when the Lord had finished speaking with Abraham, he left, and Abraham returned home. Amen. Genesis chapter 18 is surely one of the greatest chapters in the Bible, with two of the greatest questions ever asked within it. Three men appear to Abraham in the opening verses. He showers them with a welcome and with wonderful hospitality. There's a lesson to be learned here, according to the Jewish Talmud, which is a sort of commentary on these stories. It says rather beautifully, "The righteous say little and do much." We see that certainly in the hospitality of Abraham. One of these men, of course, is the Lord himself. That becomes clear by verse 10. He's referred to as such there. And he inquires about Sarah. And in verse 10, he repeats the promise from chapter 17 and verse 21 about these OAPs having a son, and it'll happen this time next year, he says. Which is met by Sarah, who's in the tent, hearing all of this, with laughter. Do you remember we said yesterday, there's a lot of laughter going on in these chapters, but not always of a good kind. This is the laughter of cynicism and unbelief. And that leads, of course, to the first great question in verse 14, which is from the Lord to people. Verse 14, is anything too hard for the Lord? The answer, of course, is no. Nothing is too difficult for God. If it is his will, if it is his promise, even if it involves, as it certainly will here, a miracle to be done by his power. A child given to an aged, barren woman? Yes. And one day, the greatest miracle of all, the perfect Son, who will be born of a Jewish teenage virgin. But then the second great question here moves from a man now addressing God. And we find it in the midst of this rather tense exchange between Abraham and the Lord concerning the impending judgment which is coming upon Sodom. Now, everybody knows that there's great wickedness in this place called Sodom. But what if there are some righteous people there? And in this conversation, verse 25 at the end, what does Abraham say to the Lord? Will not the judge of all the earth do right? Now, there's something very risky about Abraham talking to God like this, and something a little bit impetuous, because he is coming boldly, but also daring to challenge the Lord. It's as if he's saying, how dare you, Lord, do this? This is often so typical of the human response when we think about God's judgments. There are many such examples in the Bible. We could think of examples in history, and the ultimate judgment of God is in the future, in hell. Well, amazingly, though I think, I don't know, I think about this. Is this a right thing to be saying to God? Is Abraham coming in the right spirit? Well, amazingly, the Lord, with great grace, he takes this. He engages in a conversation with his servant, as we have read. Abraham, then, I think, as the conversation goes on, is more humble in verse 27. He says, I'm nothing but dust and ashes. He's now not saying, who are you, Lord? He's now saying, who am I? That's more the question to be asked. And actually, the same question, it's almost like it can be turned on its head in verse 25 to say, well, of course he is. And of course he will be a just and a fair judge. And Abraham comes to see that as the Lord has this two-way conversation with him and just reveals these things more and more to him. If we could see our sin for what it truly is in the sight of a holy God, then we would be amazed that we are not in hell right now, which is what we certainly deserve. Only because of Jesus, crucified for me, am I alive in him, and am I free from judgment. Will not the judge of all the earth do right? The answer to that is, of course, he absolutely will, because of Jesus.